Hello and welcome to today's webcast titled Don't Get Caught Off Guard, Using AI to Prevent Surprises. I'm Aaron Larson, Executive Editor of Power Magazine. I'll be moderating today's program, during which we'll hear from Janet Webb, Director of Advanced Reliability with GE Vernova, and Mazen Yunus, Senior Director of Product Management with GE Vernova. The presentation is expected to last about 45 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. Before we get started, I'll run through a few housekeeping items. In the webinar platform, you should see a chat area and a Q&A area. If you're experiencing any technical difficulty, you can ask for help using the chat function, and our production staff will assist you. To submit questions for our speakers, please enter those in the Q&A section rather than in the chat area. You can enter questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the program. Any that we don't get to during the live session will be answered via email after the webinar. Today's presentation will be archived on our server for up to a year, and future viewing will remain free of charge. You can use the same URL to reach the archive program as you did to reach the live program. PowerPoint slides will also be available upon request. A certificate of completion for professional development hours will be sent via email to every registered participant who attends. Before we begin, I'd like to thank GE Vernova for underwriting today's program. The company's generosity allows everyone to attend the presentation at no cost. So with that, Janet, we have the topic of the webinar is focused on using AI to prevent surprises. So how can AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning really prevent surprises and failures?
Thanks, Aaron. And we're thrilled to be here with you today. I'm going to start with a use case that shows an example of how our machine learning predictive analytics can help prevent surprises and give you advanced warning before there are issues in the plant. And this one is for our, kind of the most modern and sophisticated gas turbine equipment, the H class. In this case, it was the thrust-bearing temperature anomaly that was detected. So we have a service that we offer, a managed service. And in this case, our services team was doing the monitoring. And they found this temperature anomaly. They looked deeper into the data after they received an alert and saw the trend, steadily increasing over time. Quickly engaged our own GE Vernova product engineering team that managed the gas turbine hardware, and then connected them with the site in order to take action. So in this case, a number of actions were taken in order to manage the issue that they were detecting. They did not have to shut down immediately. They had advance warning, as I mentioned. So they derated the unit until the next planned outage, and they changed some of those planned actions that they had prepared for that outage, including bearing inspections, having parts on hand and resources available on hand to perform the maintenance, and some supplemental inspections that they may not have done otherwise. And ultimately, they found significant distress on the bearing, what would have led to a potential 6-month downtime, which is a really severe event and significant cost avoidance in terms of 6 months could be tens of millions of dollars in cost avoidance. So I wanted to start by sharing that example. This is one of many. I'll go through a few more today as we proceed, but I think it shows clearly that our machine learning analytics software is finding these issues and helping prevent surprises, helping prevent unplanned downtime. We have a long history really with AI in GE Vernova. The product that I'm speaking of is Smart Signal. I'm sure many of you are aware of, have heard of Smart Signal. In this case, GE Vernova purchased Smart Signal from Argonne National Labs in 2011. So truly for decades, we have been leveraging this proven and trusted machine learning technology. And I'll pass it to you, Mazen, to describe some of the other areas of AI within GE Vernova.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you so much, Janet. And Aaron, thank you for hosting us. Great to be here today with the webinar with you all. So yeah, I think besides what Janet is describing, right, we have a long history in AI, ML, and definitely much of the products that we have, they can prevent surprises from a cost standpoint, right, from a failure standpoint, as Janet says. We've had the AI expert systems like autonomous tuning and boiler optimizations. These basically look at their closed loop optimization system that can basically use neural network models, right? Model predictive controls as well for combustion optimization, right? Reducing heat rates. So like we've seen real world savings with customers beyond $300,000 a year in savings, right? These prevent budgetary surprises, for example. In addition to that, we have newer examples like autonomous inspection. This is a computer vision image analytics solution that is utilizing AI/ML models to detect issues with assets like corrosion, gas leaks, thermal heat detection. Right? It can tap into fixed and non-fixed cameras. That uses basically a convolutional neural network. Right, and you basically translate these images into time series data, give insights to these specific monitored assets, and you can basically reduce the amount of manual errors there, reduce the inspection cycle that you have, right, and basically reduce the time it takes for inspection from weeks all the way down to minutes. I think overall, right, like when we talk about AI/ML being a tool of help, I think we've seen a lot of hype with Gen AI these days, right? So naturally, our world got heavy interest on focusing on the topic of AI, right? That probably shifted that focus into that topic. I think the hype is great, but there are multiple proven traditional AI solutions that are out there, as you see on this slide and the prior slide that Janet was sharing, that have been out there in the market and that have been bringing real value to our industry throughout the years.
Yeah, obviously, GE Vernova has been using AI for a long time. What are some of the top ways that it can be used today to help companies?
Yeah, I can start on this one, and I'll maybe make a couple points and pass it to Mazen as well. So we've talked about helping prevent failures, getting early notification, and in many cases, days or weeks or even months of early notification, allowing for maintenance planning, parts planning, etc. But another one of the challenges that I hear a lot from our users, and from power generators, is that they struggle with the knowledge gap of people with a lot of experience, 40 years experience, retiring and trying to bring newer talent up to speed and fill in that knowledge gap. Software in general and AI more specifically can really help close the knowledge gap by not only having storage of that information and data, failure modes, for example, but also having the AI tools to help you access that information quickly, in a way that allows you to be more productive. Mazen, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, and I'll build on the productive piece, right? On the productivity side, I think you're seeing simple tasks like text summarization, natural language query when you want to get insights from a specific database. It can be an expert system or not, right? It can be your historical database. I think a lot of these reduce time it takes for employees just to find the information that they're looking for, right? Could be as simple as summarizing an asset history, right, within the asset performance management world, or within Smart Signal, right? It could be looking at historical failure modes that asset has seen, right? Just give me a summary of what are the failure modes seen and what were the recommendations or steps taken to solve for that specific issue. This really puts information at the fingertips of users by just asking a simple question that can generate that information for them, which goes a long way in improving productivity. I think the other piece, right, is the automation of certain tasks as well, right? Like in the in the field of inspection, for example, right? You can, if you're deploying a robot to go and do the inspection and your rounds and taking pictures of certain assets, you're basically reducing, or you don't need a field engineer to basically spend some travel time there and take manual image captures, spend the time to upload that image back, right, into the system. That whole workflow would be automated, and now the field engineer's job is shifting from the mundane task of taking a picture to actually thinking about how to service the specific asset. And I think the other piece is safety as well, right? In the same spirit as talking about inspections and going on sites, I think certain employees may be prone to dangerous areas, right? Exposed to dangerous areas. Now that you have robotics, right, that can, or drones, or right, you can even use satellite imagery today to look at transformers and other things. I think these are all tools and technologies that are helping companies today, be more responsible, safe, productive. And as Janet says, there's an aging workforce out there. You build a expert system around that. You preserve that knowledge for your new workforce coming in case they need to refer to things, and it can help with preventing failures proactively.
Okay,
I think with that, there's going to be a poll question that we're gonna roll out.
The poll question is: my organization currently is not allowing third-party software with Gen AI. Yes or no? Give people a little bit of time to answer that. And the answers are coming in. Looks like about a half and half split, a little bit more on the no side than the yes. But it's certainly interesting how different organizations allow or disallow this type of technology to be used.
Yeah, and we can certainly touch more on that, particularly in the Gen AI space, the level of maturity of the technology, and kind of how we're thinking about it within GE Vernova.
Okay. And I know many customers have invested in clean data processes, but a lot of them don't necessarily know what to do with the data. How can AI help in that regard?
Yeah, starting with good data is really the first step. Being able to collect the data and have it readily available and have good data. A model is only as good as the data that it's built from, and so if it's not good data, your outcomes will not be beneficial either. So it's really, the next step to me is really about leveraging that data in these types of AI and ML models to turn insights into actions. So we're showing another example again in the H-class equipment where, and again, this was our services monitoring team received alerts. So it's, we've got a model built from this good data. The alerts come in, they can trust the alert as they investigate further. And in this case found, an unequal inlet guide vane and variable stator vane electrical actuator loading. And we're able to, again, reach out to the site and, work through some recommendations on planned maintenance, ultimately refurbishing and reinstalling, and going back again to that model after the fact to ensure that the actions that were taken did correct the issue that they were seeing. So that's kind of, to me, the next step is going to that from insights to actions. The other thing that I want to note is I've heard working with some of our users or people who are interested in starting to adopt software that, as they're just getting started, they've got the data in place. They don't feel like they're ready for AI. We don't have a data science team. AI is too daunting of a software for us to start with. And really what I would say there is, in some ways, AI, like what we're describing here, actually makes things easier. And also, because we have the flexibility of this services monitoring team, often what we see is our users, when they're new, will start with our services so that they can get that very quick time to value. A model can be built with a minimum of 2 weeks of data. And when you have an expert who's doing that monitoring for you, you'll see that time to value very quickly. And then most often, I would say they plan for a transition period over, say, a year or two, where their internal teams start to learn more of the software, and then they transition to either a lower tier of services, or in some cases to fully self-performing and monitoring themselves. So that flexibility and those options are there.
Mm-hmm. I think we've got another poll question that we wanted to roll out. This one is about the benefit of adopting AI for my company. Is it clear, yes or no? Give a little time here. Again, is the benefit clear for your company when it comes to adopting AI? It looks like most people think yes. They understand where the benefits are. So that's good to see that they recognize the value, at least, and just getting approval perhaps to implement is the hardest part. So, and I know many people are also concerned about AI and how it may take jobs. What are your thoughts on that? Is there risk to jobs when they implement AI projects?
Yeah, I can take that one, Aaron. Thank you. I think it's a normal concern, right? Whenever we hear of like new capabilities that can synthesize data, automate tasks, right? It's a normal concern to have. I do think about it differently, though, right? I think these technologies are basically here as productivity boosters. I don't see them replacing the human aspect of things, right? They can't think or act on their own yet, right? It's a far-fetched concept at this stage, at least. I think with generative AI, and I think more importantly agentic AI, which is probably what triggers people to be concerned, we're already hearing about means of improving day-to-day tasks, right? The way I view it is that it's taking away non-value add work and time we spend on certain tasks and just repositioning us to think about things or act around certain outputs from these AI tools differently, right? I think the picture says it all, right? And the title of the picture, "Human in the Loop," is very important whenever we're designing, and like that's a concept we always use in GE as well, the human in the loop aspect when we're designing these AI tools. It's basically at the forefront of how we design workflows, right? So if we're automating a workflow, you always need a human insight to ensure that and acknowledge that the AI output is correct, right? And ensure that tasks are safely and correctly processed, right? We're in a highly regulated industry and environment. So like you always need that human aspect and oversight and experts and SMEs to be there as part of the process that you're building at the end of the day. I'll give you an example, right? Like in our monitoring and diagnostic centers, we'd have an AI agent, for example, that's disposing an alert, right? As true or false. The monitoring engineer, right, can basically acknowledge the disposition of that specific alert as correct, or they can override that agent to disposition it appropriately, right? Once done, the agent can go and trigger the creation of a case and auto-generate the case with specific recommendations to take actions on and fix a particular issue that came up, right? Now, the monitoring engineer can approve these prescriptive guidelines that are generated and basically ensure that there's also a feedback loop, right? If the agent needs to improve that output, there's a feedback loop where the human in the loop, the person who's taking action, can give feedback back, so that system improves the output in the next time. So I think from my perspective, right, the human in the loop concept is crucial, because it's AI basically at the end of the day is a means of improving the user experience, and people are becoming more focused on tasks that are important for them and actually applying their subject matter expertise within that automated process, right? Where we keep a human to say, yep, take the next action, carry on with your automated process.
I know many power companies are facing extremely thin budgets, and it makes it difficult when they're trying to come up with decisions on software investments. So what is the return on investment, or ROI, for predictive analytics, and what can customers expect from implementing these types of programs?
Yeah, it's a really common question, and I'll start by saying that we recognize that it can be overwhelming, the number of products that are out there in various areas, and actually spending time with our sales teams early in the year as they kicked off the year. A lot of conversation was around a power generator may be overwhelmed by the APM suite of products, for example, and as the experts internally who have seen many customers find success on different journeys of adopting the software, it's important for us to be advisors in that space, to understand, listen to the existing situation of someone who's considering software, and be able to make recommendations and point to successful use cases where other people have done this and found a lot of success. So in some cases, we do see, somebody wants to adopt a full suite across many sites, but I think that tends to be the exception, where it's more common that we would say, Smart Signal as a use case. Let's implement Smart Signal in one site and see the benefits and learn through that adoption and change management process, and then be able to apply that to multiple sites, or consider additional products in that space that would add more value. So it's a journey, and it's one that we can help with, certainly. I'll walk through a few more examples here that kind of address that question of what can we expect in terms of dollar savings, as we consider the adoption. So this one I wanted to show, I showed a couple of gas turbines, but Smart Signal will cover across the balance of plant, any OEM in terms of manufacturer, and actually across multiple industries, including oil and gas, mining, petrochemicals, et cetera. So it's a very versatile tool with a catalog of what we call blueprints that have these failure modes built in for all these different types of equipment. So in this case, looking at a generator example, I think there was maybe it was the previous slide, there was also an HRSG example. So you can just see some different pieces of equipment where, again, the software finds an anomaly, it sends an alert to the team, whether it's our monitoring team or the end user, and those can then be actioned. And as you can see through some of these examples, the other thing I'll point out is it's not a single tag. Typically, it's not a single sensor that's showing an alert. It's a multivariate solution. It's analytics built around indications that are coming from a number of different sensors. So you might see a change in temperature, and that could be an early warning that might come in at a lower severity. So again, these alerts are prioritized in terms of their severity. And then when they see a different sensor change, maybe that's an indication of something that could be more severe. So these alerts that are coming in, and the multivariate nature is allowing you to put those pieces together within this pre-built blueprint with these failure modes. We can just jump to, the next slide. And this is kind of a more holistic, so I've shown specific, what we call catches, but this would be an example, and this one's published, so you can read more about it. Verdantix published this. This was a user who had 12 plants, so a large fleet, and saw an increase in complexity in their assets. They were having challenges with availability, so they implemented, in this case, not only Smart Signal but also our thermal performance solution. And with those two solutions combined, they were able to see over a 2-year period an increase in availability of 2%, which is very significant, as well as $5.5 million US dollars in savings per year. And that's the combination of fuel savings from the thermal performance improvements, as well as what we've been talking about with avoided costs, leveraging our predictive analytics. And then the last thing that I'll touch on here in terms of what can you expect to get out of this investment is, and Mazen talked a little bit about safety earlier. I also want to draw this connection of reliability to safety. It's not one that we necessarily think about. We think more about, the improved availability and not having surprises. But I think intuitively, when we think about doing reactive work, it makes sense that there would be more safety issues when we're under pressure and under the stress of knowing that the company is losing money the longer that we're in this state of being unavailable. And so that actually shows up in the data as well. So it's interesting. You can see here the trends of doing more predictive and preventative maintenance reduces safety issues, whereas doing more reactive work increases those safety issues. And not surprisingly, it's the most likely person to get injured is the maintenance technician, who has less experience and is doing this in a reactive state. So to me, that's a really huge value as well, to think about predictive analytics also having that positive impact on safety.
Yeah, that's a good point, Janet. It's always hard to quantify events that don't happen, but and safety is a good one, where somebody doesn't get injured. There's a real benefit to that. So what about companies that don't adopt AI? What sort of consequences could they face?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, right? You've heard through the examples from that Janet showed, that there's a risk of higher operational costs. You see slower decision making, potential availability disruptions, right? These cost money for companies, right? And at the end of the day, it's not just the adoption of AI. It's the adoption of the tools by, let's say, power generation companies, right? Oil and gas companies in other industries that may find value in that. Also, the vendors need to make sure that they're baking in these solutions that are rendering the product to be more reliable, to render the product to be more useful for the for the task at hand. So I think in general, we're even seeing higher energy costs. If it's a company that doesn't have the ability to do generation optimization, switching between specific energy sources, between renewables and gas at certain peak hours or off-peak hours, right? How you manage that? There are tools out there, generation optimization planning. Even we have some tools out there that do help with enabling these or unlocking some of these benefits for companies. So I think, it's the adoption of AI as an enabler, and then the tools themselves that are built by expert vendors or like SMEs that are going to help with that. And I think at the end of the day as well, we must acknowledge that probably in our industry, it's a highly regulated industry, right? So we need to operate in, and like safety and compliance, right, around the adoption of AI is at the forefront of where we need to stand, right? Things like the EU AI Act that we must ensure that we're complying with, right? Ensuring safeguarding our data, safeguarding customer data, making sure no IP leakages happen. These are all very important measures to put in place. And I think I would say that, it's safe for companies to adopt the technology slow and doing it right than going fast or not adopting it at all. And I think, I think we wanted to also have a poll question as well here for our audience. We'd like some insights as well from them.
Right. And this question is about the expectations for 2025 this year and 2026 next year. And attendees can select all that apply on how you plan or what your plan is for adopting traditional AI technologies or newer technologies. If you're still gathering information about AI and machine learning, or have you already adopted traditional AI technologies and already adopted newer AI technologies such as Gen AI, or not looking into it at this very moment, but hopefully planning to start looking into it would be a good option. Again, we'll give some time to answer. You can select as many from the list as are applicable. Looks like a lot of people are still gathering information, which is probably why they're on the webinar, learning about some of the options that are available. And some have already started adopting, so it's good to see. All right, you can keep entering. There's a pretty broad split through all 5 of the categories, or a pretty equal split, although still in the gathering phase seems to be one of the higher options right now. I guess my last question for you is, why GE Vernova? What sets your team and your products apart from others that are working in this sector?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I think you can definitely read the bullet points there, but what I would say is, we're continuously evolving our solutions, right? I think with the introduction of new tools like the computer vision tool that I was talking about earlier, the autonomous inspection tool, the prescriptive recommendation aspect that we've brought into our, smart signal tool has been around for a while, right? But we didn't have that prescriptive recommendation aspect in it, right? And I think that, coupled with our ability to have flexible deployment options, right, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in the cloud, I think gives flexibility to our customers in terms of picking and choosing the right solution that would cater to their use cases and needs. And I know, Janet, you have a few more things to add on that one.
Yeah, sure. I agree. Certainly on the ways that we're investing in AI. When I think about smart signal in particular, but really even more broadly, when we talk about generative AI and kind of the hype around it that Mazen mentioned, it is a newer technology. I know if I go out, just on a web search and use Gen AI, I have seen wrong answers come back. So there's reason to be hesitant with that technology, today. But we're still continuing to do proof of concept and pilots, and partnering with industry experts in that space, so that as that technology matures, that we're ready for it and have the ability to adopt it in our software. But knowing that in general, we're always going to make sure that any AI and ML that we're adding will add value and not add that level of risk that takes away the value And also when we talk about generative AI, the data cost of data storage, data query, et cetera, is so much higher in generative AI than it is in a typical search agent, as an example. So those factors have to be considered in as we develop the solution, because otherwise, again, we wouldn't be passing on value if we were passing on so much additional cost that it made the solution not worth it. So I would say with GE Vernova, we are very keen on adopting the right level of technology at the right time that you can have confidence in. With something like Smart Signal, we're using this internally as well, having our own monitoring team. And so we have sort of a test bed of, a group that can use this and prove out the technologies before they would even go to a beta opportunity for our end customers. We also have within GE Vernova on the power generation side, their biggest monitoring and diagnostic center is leveraging APM software as well. So we have multiple ways that we can kind of prove out these solutions. And one that I'll talk about briefly that I'm very excited about, that is in internal trials currently, internal beta testing, if you will, is I talked about the alerts, and they come with an alert priority. We're also looking at machine learning to then give you a percent likelihood of an alert being a false positive, so that you can even further prioritize. And we're testing this with our internal teams today. So really exciting new technology that's coming. And then again, Mazen mentioned the flexibility. I think having our services team helps enable that flexibility. Also having just the deep expertise that's built into our library of blueprints that include thousands of failure modes. This has been built over time, and it's something that we have always seen as something that differentiates really on equipment where we have a deep hardware expertise in addition to software.
Well, I think from my perspective, what gives me confidence is the fact that you guys have been doing this for so long. You said you've been really incorporating AI for over a decade. AI has come into the general mainstream when ChatGPT came out, and if all of a sudden you decided, we got to get AI into our programs because it's the new buzzword or it's the new thing that everybody's trying to do, that would give me a little more pause than the fact that this is just a natural evolution that you guys have already been working on for a long time. So I think that is very encouraging, and I think exciting for the industry. So we have had a lot of questions come in. I'd like to thank again Janet and Mazen for providing such informative and interesting information. I'd also like to point out that there are 4 items loaded in the webinar handouts tab, so you can access them and download the handouts at any time, and be sure to do that before you log out today, or you can come back in the on-demand version and get them there as well. In the meantime, we'll get into the Q&A. We will consolidate similar questions and answer as many as possible in the time that remains. Any questions, again, that we don't get to due to time constraints will be answered individually via email following the program. So at the top of our list here, we've got a question that came in, and it says, is there a progression from the old Gen 8 monitoring service that was offered on generators in the late 80s? Is that part of what's kind of evolved into this new AI technology?
Yeah, and I can start on that one. So I'm not actually familiar. I have been with GE Vernova and GE prior to that for 19 years, but not in the 80s. So apologies, but no, truly the monitoring has evolved, and there are, I think, still existing, particular 2 GE Vernova generators, a program around that specifically, where you could additionally have smart signal. And typically, so I can certainly speak to this in the area of the gas turbine, where the same engineers who are involved in the development of the hardware are behind the monitoring and the analytics of the gas turbine. There's a service that is in our contractual service agreements. And in that case, and I believe this would be true with the generator too, but can confirm, leveraging smart signal on top of that gives you an additional layer of early warning. And there's a difference in the kind of inherent nature of that. When it comes to the hardware development and that expertise, it's a knowledge of failure modes that are particular and understood well by having the data for the entire fleet. So, GE Vernova has data for all of the GE Vernova equipment that we monitor as a fleet. And that's a particular sort of type of monitoring. Additionally, what we do with Smart Signal, because it's advanced pattern recognition, we can see other anomaly detection as well. And that's why Smart Signal is effective across GE equipment, non-GE Vernova equipment, because it doesn't necessarily require a full fleet of data. You can leverage the patterns in the data in these empirical models or data-driven models that have different outcomes. And so, to our end users, it's less relevant who's doing the monitoring and how we're looking at the equipment and helping manage it internally. Because of that, there's a reason that today it's 2 separate teams using kind of different methodologies, if you will.
All right, thanks, Janet. And can you talk a little bit about the cybersecurity of the system and any necessary security needed to keep the data available 24/7, such as on an iPhone perhaps, but also keeping it secure?
Yeah, I think from a security perspective and data availability in general, right? We're talking, in a cloud setting, for example, right? We encrypt any data at rest, any data in flight. All of these are encrypted. We have access controls, security controls, user-based RBAC, role-based access controls that are implemented. I think the question touches upon data availability, right? So within the cloud, we ensure high availability of our storage systems as well, right? With data replications across what we call availability zones. Obviously, backing up the data, making sure that the data is safeguarded from any disaster for disaster recovery, and ensuring that we have point-in-time recovery enabled, for example, to safeguard that data. We employ these tools and techniques to make sure that data is there, available at the fingertips of our customers, and available for the software that's being used that's accessing this data.
And I think you probably just answered this question in the answer you gave, but does the analysis you offer operate through a cloud service?
Yes. So, and I think this is probably also the question is geared towards Smart Signal. It's actually in the cloud. Yes, we host it as a SaaS-based offering, software as a service that we provide. We also are able to provide that specific software in an on-prem environment, in a customer's specific data center. Right. So both are fair game, fair asks from customers.
Okay. What instrumentation do I need to use AI predictive analytics software?
Yeah, this is, I think, a pretty common question that I've heard too. We start with a services team member looking at the existing instrumentation that you have to understand what's there, and then they can help explain how much of the software and the modeling would be applicable. Often we can work with the instrumentation that's there and potentially make recommendations to add instrumentation, but fully recognizing that that's not always a viable option. And so there is flexibility within the products too. I mentioned the pre-built model and blueprints. Those tend to have some minimum requirements of instrumentation, but most often that's critical on your very, your high value but high criticality assets as well, which more typically you're going to have instrumentation for your turbines, your generators. There is flexibility that if there's limited instrumentation, models can still be built with the implementation that's available in order to monitor with the tags that we have. So that there's flexibility around that. And we're actually starting to look at further future enhancement that would include more ease of if you have a team of data scientists, their ability to build and add additional models. So we're just starting to get into some discovery sessions in that area, connecting more into the space of data ops and ML ops for those familiar. And if you're not familiar, an interesting topic.
Okay, thanks, Janet.
Mm-hmm.
I guess here's how accurate are these predictive models? I don't know if you can answer that or get into it.
Yeah, it's I talked a little bit earlier about the model is only as good as the data, and so if there's not good data available, it's hard to build a model that's going to have accuracy. Where you do have a high data availability and processes for having clean data, you can build a more highly accurate model. I think part of the evidence too is in those examples that we have, and your account owner, your customer service manager, or you can certainly reach out to us. We can point you to that library of catches that we've seen where you can see the results of the models providing, highly valuable output.
Okay. I know security is obviously a big issue. We've already touched on a lot of the security issues. I don't know if there's anything to add, but another question about AI and security. Do you have anything else that you can reassure people with?
Yeah, I think with probably a good aspect to tackle this is the emergence of large language models and new attack surface, right? When you think of the OWASP top 10, for example, of large language models, and for those not familiar, that's basically the top 10 security risks. You're looking at things like prompt injection, right? Training data poisoning, model denial of service, right? And these are not any different than a DDoS attack type, right? Or like trying to trick the system, basically. So I think when we think about these, it's building guardrails, right? Like prompt guard, right? How do you safeguard against particular prompts that a specific user is trying to have? You basically set these guardrails. Basic authentication authorization, right, goes a long way in all of this. At the end of the day, some of these newer technologies as well, they're accessing your APIs, safeguarding your API, as well as part of the work that's put in place. So yeah, I would say, yes, security is a risk, but in partnership with the cloud vendors and and even for on-prem, right, the on-prem use cases with our customers, we ensure that the proper guardrails are set and put in place. So we definitely take this very seriously, and the emergence, especially of new AI technology, I think brings us to make sure that we're adding these new security layers as well in place.
Very good. Does your system automatically connect to existing monitoring systems, or is it necessary to upload the data like trends to the cloud?
Yeah, I would say depends on the use case, right? If you're looking at real-time data, right? So more of event-driven. Yes, you can plug into an existing system in the cloud, like if it's in the cloud or if the customer gives access to it from the on-prem, you can stream and read that data through. And then the other use cases, if you're requiring more of historical data, we do actually connect to these monitoring systems. It could be a historian, it could be a CMMS system, an EAM system that may have your information as well for the asset. We do ingest that into our cloud to make sure that our software has access to it.
Okay, thanks, Mazen. Can the software work with other utilities besides electric generation, transmission, and distribution, such as thinking of water supply and distribution, sewer collection and treatment, roadway monitoring and maintenance, life remaining, things like that?
Yeah, in this case, we don't particularly have advanced predictive diagnostics in these spaces. But what I would say is that within the suite of APM products, so APM is asset performance management, there are a number of ways that we handle moving from reactive maintenance, for example, to condition-based maintenance, time-based maintenance. So there's rounds, for example, that you can do with a handheld device and have that incorporated into the same software suite. There's also, what we call our asset health indicator that will give you, a broader picture of asset health, and some other reliability tools as well. So when you talk about life remaining, we do have the ability for our users to develop their own reliability analytics in terms of life prediction. So thinking of Weibull analysis, if that's familiar, but basically using statistical methods to say, we've seen, even with a limited amount of failure data, maybe you've only got one failure point, but you have a lot of points of equipment still running, what we would call suspensions in that model. You can actually build these statistical models with very limited failure data to predict a lifespan of a part. And there's some other tools within that functionality as well around root cause analysis, managing the analysis and documenting throughout the process and that workflow of doing a root cause analysis. So that the APM suite gets fairly broad, and I would say there are tools within that would span across many industries. And I know, Aaron, it looks like we're out of Q&A in the chat, but there was one that I accidentally deleted instead of clicking the answer button that I wanted to bring back up. And it was asking for the root cause in the bearing issue that I noted in the first HA gas turbine example. And I just wanted to share that, unfortunately, that's not information that I have the ability to share. Knowing that's, there are things that are more proprietary in terms of those investigations.
Okay. I guess one question I have from past experience working at plants, managers very often like to be able to access data from off-site, and dig into some of the trends and things like that. How easy is that to do with these types of solutions?
Sorry. Yeah, I think if again, these are either it's an on-prem or a cloud solution. I think the access to the data is going to be available, as I answered already one of the questions there, if it's depending on the use case that you need. But overall, it's a simple login into the system based on the path you choose. If it's in the cloud, right, it's a SaaS-based delivery. You log in, you access. There are analysis tools that are available within the software that we provide. You can do trending, charting. You can look at the historical trends of whatever the use case is. You can do some BI as well, visualization as well within these tools that we have. So I think the access is it depends on the path that you're taking, right? If it's an on-prem, you go within your within the route that is established within your cloud company. Everything is federated at the end of the day, whether it's cloud or on-prem, over to the customer's IDP environment. So you would just log in like you would log into any other enterprise application that you log into today.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we've got a little bit of time. If you'd like to have any last words that we haven't talked about, or things that we haven't shared.
Just a thank you from me. It's been a real pleasure to join you today, and feel free to follow up with us anytime. Mazen?
Yep, likewise here. +1 to what you said. We're happy to address anything outside of the webinar as well. Feel free to reach out. And Aaron, thank you so much for being an awesome host.
All right, it was good session. I think provided a lot of great useful information. So I hope people gain some insight from that. With that, again, I'd like to thank GE Vernova for underwriting today's event, and thank everyone for attending. We hope you found the presentation beneficial, and hope you have a great day.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.